Shabbat Shalom. We begin this morning setting our intention for our Shabbat worship on page 66. Each of us enters the sanctuary with a different need. Some hearts are full of peace and gratitude, overflowing with love and joy. They are eager to confront the day to make the world a better place. They are recovering from illness or have escaped misfortune. We rejoice with them. Some hearts ache with sorrow. Disappointments weigh heavily on them. Families have been broken. Loved ones lie on a bed of pain. Death has taken a cherished loved one. May our presence and caring bring them comfort. Some hearts are embittered, ideals are betrayed and mocked, answers sought in vain. Life has lost its meaning and value. May the knowledge that we too are searching restore our hope and renew our faith. We continue on page 76 as we thank God for our bodies with Asher Yatzar, and then move to thanking God for our souls on page 78. We read together on 76. Praise to you, Adonai our God, sovereign of the universe, who formed the human body with skill, creating the body's many pathways and openings. It is well known before your throne of glory that if one of them be wrongly opened or closed, it would be impossible to endure and stand before you. Blessed are you, Adonai, who heals all flesh, working wondrously. Baruch atah Adonai, rofeh chol basar, umafli la'asot.
נשמה שנתת בי צרעים, אתה ברת, אתה יצרת, אתה נפחת בי, נתן משמרה בקרבי, כל זמן שהנשמה בקרבי.
We turn now to page 83 as we read responsively. As I awaken, let this be my thought. May my day be filled with acts of loving kindness. Let me be drawn to learning and discernment, and may my actions be shaped by mitzvot.
Keep me from iniquity, disgrace, and sin. May I not be overwhelmed by temptation or despair.
Distance me from evil people and false friends. Let me cultivate a life of goodness.
May my hands reach out in kindness, and I will serve God through acts of righteousness.
Today and every day may I merit your mercy by living my life with compassion and love.
Holy One of blessing, draw me to your words. Teach me the art of sacred living.
Baruch atah Adonai, hamelamed chasadim tovim le'amo Yisrael. We join together on page 100 for Psalm 150. We turn to page 106 for Chatzi Kaddish and rise and remain standing through Shema.
יתקדש שמי רבה, אמן. ועמד יברח חירותי, וימליך מלכותי, וחייכון וימכון וחייך בית ישראל. בגלוי בזמן קריב, בימרו, אמן. יהי שמי רבה מבורך, לעולם עולמי עמיה, יתברך, יתברך וישתבח, יתפאר ויתשמע ויתנשא, יתהדר ויתעלה ויתעלה, שמי לקודשה בריחו, לעילה מן כל חטא ושיעתה, תושבחתה ונחמתה, תמירון בעלמה, בימרו אמן. ברכו את אדוני המבורך, ברוך אדוני המבורך לעולם ועד.
Baruch atah Adonai, Eloheinu melech haolam, yotzer or uvarei choshech, oseh shalom uvarei et hakol, ha'me'ir la'aretz v'ladarim aleha barachamim, uvtuvo mechadesh b'chol yom tamid ma'aseh v'reishit. Ma rabu ma'asecha Adonai, kulam b'chochma asita, mal'ah ha'aretz kinyanecha. Titbarach Adonai Eloheinu, al shevach ma'aseh yadecha, Ba'al ma'orei or sha'asita yifa'arucha sela, or chadash al tzion ta'ir, benizkeh hulanu me'era la'oro, Baruch atah Adonai, yotzer ha'me'orot. We continue on page 113. Love your neighbor as yourself, you said, and light blinded we saw, that inner and outer worlds are one, as you are one. You spoke and we wrote, we reached for you down the centuries, your light moving before us, as we climbed, fell back, and climbed again, your Sinai of life. Baruch atah Adonai, habocher ba'amo Yisrael be'ahava.
Shema Yisrael, Adonai Eloheinu, Adonai echad. Baruch Shem kevod malchuto, le'olam va'ed.
You may be seated. Please join me on page 116 for V'ahavta.
ואהבת את אדוני אלוהיך בכל לבבך ובכל נפשך ובכל מאודיך, והיו הדברים האלה אשר אנוכי מצווך היום על לבביך, ושיננתם לבניך ודיברת בם בשבתך בביתך ובלכתך בדרך ובשוכבך ובקומך, וקשרתם לאות על ידיך, והיו לטוטפות בין עיניך, וכתבתם על מזוזות ביתך ובשעריך, למען תזכרו ועשיתם את כל מצוותי, והייתם קדושים לאלוהיכם. אני אדוני אלוהיכם, אשר הוצאתי אתכם מארץ מצרים, להיות לכם לאלוהים. אני אדוני אלוהיכם.
On page 123, we read together. The good in us will win over all the wickedness, over all the wrongs we have done. We will look back at the pages of written history and be amazed, and then we will laugh and sing and the good that is in us, children in their cradles, will have won. Our hearts beat with certainty that there is a day and an hour and a mountain called Zion, and that all of the sufferings will gather there and become song, ringing out into every corner of the earth from end to end, and the nations will hear it, and like the caravans in the desert, will all to that morning throng. We continue with the Amidah on page 124. Please rise.
וזוכר חסדי אבות ואימהות, ומביא גאולה לבני בניהם, למען שמו באהבה, מלך עוזר ומושיע ומגן. ברוך אתה אדוני, מגן אברהם בעזרת שרה. אתה גיבור לעולם אדוני, מחיי הכל אתה רב להושיע. מוריד הטל, מחכה חיים בחסד, מחיי הכל ברחמים רבים. רבים, סומך נופלים ורופא חולים, ומותיר אסורים, ומקיים אמונתו לשני עפר, מי כמוך בעל גבורות, ומי דומה לך, מלך ממית ומחיה, ומצמיח ישועה, בנאמן אתה לחיות הכל, ברוך אתה אדוני, מחיה הכל. נקדש, נקדש, נקדש את שמך בעולם, נקדש את שמך בעולם, כשם שמקדישים אותו לשמי מרום, ככתוב היה נביאך, וקרא זה לזה ואמר, קדוש, 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 אדוני צבאות, מלוך כל הארץ כבודו. אדיר, אדירנו, אדיר, אדירנו, אדוני, אדוני, אדוננו, מדיר, מדיר שמך בכל הארץ, ברוך כבוד אדוני במקומו. אחד אלוהינו, הוא מלכנו, הוא מושיענו, והוא ישמיענו, והוא ישמיענו, ורחמיו לעיני כל חי. אני אדוני אלוהיכם, ימלוך אדוני לעולם, אלוהיך ציון לדור ודור, הללויה. לדור ודור נגיד גודלך, ולנצח נצחים קדושתך נקדיש, ושבחך אלוהינו מפינו לא ימוש לעולם ועד. ברוך אתה אדוני האל הקדוש.
You may be seated. We continue on page 132 as we sing Yismechu, rejoicing in these 25 hours of Shabbat.
ישמחו במלאכתך, שומרי 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 שבת, קוראי עונג שבת. ישמחו במלאכתך, שומרי 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 שבת, קוראי עונג שבת.
On page 135 at the bottom, we read responsively. Where has this week vanished? Is it lost forever? Will I ever recover anything from it? The joy of life, the unexpected victory, the realized hope, the task accomplished? Will I ever be able to banish the memory of pain, the sting of defeat, the heaviness of boredom? On this day, let me keep for a while what must drift away. On this day, let me be free of the burdens that must return. On this day, Shabbat, abide.
Help me to withdraw for a while from the flight of time, contain the retreat of the hours and days from the grasp of frantic life.
Let me learn to pause if only for this day. Let me find peace on this day. Let me enter into a quiet world this day. On this day, Shabbat, abide. Baruch atah Adonai mekadesh ha-Shabbat. Together at the top of page 137. Ever-present one, may we, your people Israel, be worthy in our deeds and our prayer, wherever we live, wherever we seek you, in this land and Zion restored, in all lands. You are our God, whom alone we serve and reverence. Baruch atah Adonai, she'otecha levadcha be'ira na'avod. We acknowledge with thanks that you are Adonai our God and the God of our ancestors forever. You are the rock of our lives and the shield of our salvation in every generation. Let us thank you and praise you for our lives which are in your hand, for our souls which are in your care, for your miracles that we experience every day, and for your wondrous deeds and favors at every time of day, evening, morning, and noon. O good one whose mercies never end, O compassionate one whose kindness never fails, we forever put our hope in you. For all these things, O sovereign, let your name be forever praised and blessed. O God, our Redeemer and Helper, let all who live affirm you and praise your name in truth. Blessed are you, Adonai, your name is goodness, and you are worthy of thanksgiving. Baruch atah Adonai, hatov shimcha ulecha na'eh lehodot.
Sim, 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 shalom, sim, 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 shalom, sim, 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 shalom, tova v'racha. Sim, 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 shalom, sim, 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 shalom, sim, 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 shalom, tova v'racha. Ya la 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 la, ya la la, ya la 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 la, ya la la, ya la 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 la, ya la la la, sim, 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 shalom, sim, 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 shalom, sim, 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 shalom, tova v'racha.
Please take a moment for your own silent meditation.
Seder Kriyat HaTorah, our service for the reading of Torah, page 245. Assemble the people, men, women, and children, and the strangers in your cities, to hear, to learn, to revere Adonai your God, to observe faithfully the words of this Torah, and let their children who do not yet know it hear, that they too may learn to revere Adonai your God. We rise in honor of our Torah.
Ein kavacha Elohim Adonai, bekemasecha, malchutcha malchut kol olamim, omer meshatecha bechol dor vador. Adonai melech, Adonai malach, Adonai moch leolam vaed, Adonai os lemoiten, Adonai yevarech et amo v'shalom.
At the bottom of page 247, we read responsively. In this scroll is the secret of our people's life from Sinai until now.
Its teaching is love and justice, goodness and hope. Freedom is its gift to all who treasure it. Baruch Shanatan Torah Torah. Baruch Shanatan Torah Torah. Lamo Yisrael b'kedushato. Shema Yisrael Adonai Eloheinu Adonai Echad. Echad Eloheinu Gadol Adonai Kadosh Shmo. Gadlul Adonai Tiv Unomim Shemo Yachtav. Lecha Adonai Hagdulah V'Gvurah Hatiferet Ve'Hanetzach Ve'Hahod Kicho B'Shamayim U'Ba'aretz Kicho B'Shamayim U'Ba'aretz Lecha Shabbat Achim Gam Yachad. Hine ma tov u'manayim. Shabbat Achim Gam Yachad. Hine ma tov, hine ma tov. Ya la 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 la. Hine ma tov, hine ma tov. Ya la 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 la.
If you are comfortable, I invite you to come up to the bima for a text study. If you would like to stay in your seats, you can. We will come and pass out the handout, and you can be seated or come up here. Okay, so you can face this way. I'm facing out so that people who are sitting, people who are on live stream, they can still see me, so you can turn in. All right, so we are in the Torah portion of Balak, which is a interesting saga where Cantor Berlin and I were talking about earlier. We always get Balak and Balaam mixed up because their names are too close, but they're very different people who play very different roles. So Balak is our king of the Moabites, who is very worried and concerned about these Israelites who have come, who seem really numerous, and is very concerned about why they are there and what they're doing. And so he brings in his soothsayer to curse them and brings them to a place so he can give them a curse above. 3 times asks for a curse in 3 different locations, and God makes him do a blessing instead. Okay, that's the general overview. So the last blessing is one that we hear a lot. We actually heard this morning. It's what we started services out with. Ma tovu ohalecha Yaakov, mishkenotecha Yisrael. Right? Talking about how fair your tents, O Jacob, your dwellings, O Israel. So Numbers 24, 5-9. Bernadette, would you read that for us?
How fair are your tents, O Jacob, your dwellings, O Israel, like palm groves that stretch out, like gardens beside a river, like aloes planted by the Lord, like cedars beside the water. Their boughs drip with moisture. Their roots have abundant water. Their king shall rise above Agag. Their kingdom shall be exalted. God, who freed them from Egypt, is for them like the horns of the wild ox. They shall devour enemy nations, crush their bones, and smash their arrows. They crouch, they lie down like a lion, like the king of beasts, who dare rouse them. Blessed are they who bless you, accursed they who curse you.
Quite the blessing, right? A little dark at points, but it's a pretty good blessing, I would say, right? So I wanted to look at this first line and understand, why are we saying tents and then dwellings, and why are they 2 separate words? So we have, I like charts, okay? So I made a little chart here. So we have ohalecha, which direct translation would be your tents, and Sforno says that this is specifically talking about Torah academies. It's talking about schools. Okay, so Balaam is looking out and sees all of these tents, and that those are like schools. Then you have mishkenotecha, your dwellings, and this, Sforno says, is a reference to the synagogues of the Jews all over, as well as to their temples when they existed. So almost like Balaam can see the future. He is a soothsayer after all, right? Can see the future and says, oh, this is what's going to happen. They're going to have these temples, but right now they're being used as these synagogues. So not only is this a very numerous nation, but they have schools established, and they have synagogues, places of worship established, and how wonderful it is that they are able to have God dwell with them. That's what's in the parentheses, right? In Talmud, Rabbi Yochanan says that this is a reference to synagogues and Jewish schools, houses of studies that are equivalent to tabernacles devoted to God as God's residence, right? So being able to see that God is really dwelling among them. So then we get to Sforno, another commentary by Sforno, who wants to talk about that matovu part. Michael, will you read that for me?
The reason that Bilam says matovu, an unusual formulation, is that he wanted to make plain that the Torah academies are not only of benefit to the people who study in them, but that they also are good in a transitive sense. Example, their very existence is of benefit to the entire nation.
Right, so this is not just about them as a people, but wow, look at what the impact they can make on all of those people around them, and how they are really benefiting everybody, not just themselves. So we go to the next page, and we have Sanhedrin 108. Avi, would you read that one? Is that okay? Awesome.
Rabbi Yochanan says Bilam wanted to curse them, so that they would no longer be houses of Torah study and houses of worship. But he ended up blessing them. He did not want God to rest among the Jewish people. Instead, he ended up saying, Mishkanotecha Yisrael, your dwelling place, Israel.
Awesome, thank you, right? So there was this fear that God was there. So Balak really wanted to say, like, go away, God, don't be with these people. And instead, he says, your dwelling place, Yisrael, God is going to be there, but really talking about the nation of Israel living in that space. So why does this matter to us today? How do we relate to it? What's the point? All right, Samantha, will you read that first one, please?
The primary requisite for maintaining God's presence in our synagogues and schools is that there will be no rivalry among Jews. When we do not respect one another, when our differences constitute a reason for denigration or envy, then the Yezer Hara, evil inclination, takes a stronghold on our souls, encouraging us to follow our physical desires. Only after one has cleansed himself of this demanding and demeaning character trait can he ascend the spiritual ladder.
I love this. I think this is incredible, right? There should be no rivalry among Jews. If only that would happen. That is the goal, right? But this idea that we need to respect one another, even when we have our differences, distances we may be separated physically too, but differences, right? And that we have to be looking inside ourselves and try to get rid of this sense of trying to recognize those differences and be separate. And that is what's going to allow us to become better people and become closer to one another and to God. So then we get this next commentary written by Rabbi Kenneth Weiss, but also talking about Malbim. So Holly, you want to read that one? Or Zach, whoever wants to go at it.
Malbim infers that it is not the structures Balaam calls goodly. He is rather alluding to the goodness being inculcated and modeled within them. Malbim concludes that Balaam waxed poetic over Israel's moral rather than aesthetic beauty. When schools teach and homes model goodness, that value can be effectively transmitted to our children.
Thank you, right? So it didn't say how beautiful are your tents, it said how goodly. And that the focus of this is actually about the goodness that is found inside of them. And that when we have these tents, right, if we're going to say that those are schools, and then these dwelling places, if we're going to say that those are houses of worship, that once we do that, we are modeling good behavior. We are using those places for good. And that is what that blessing truly was about, being able to use that goodness and dispersing that to the people around us. So Cantor Berlin is going to read these verses from Torah. So if you would like, you can get close to Torah so that you can see the words. And our blessing one, two, three. Baruch hu et Adonai hamvorach. Baruch Adonai hamvarach le'olam vahed. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam. Asher bachar banu mikol hamim. V'natan lanu et Torato. Baruch atah Adonai noten haTorah.
Amen. Ma tovu ohalecha Yaakov. Mishkanotecha Yisrael, ki nechalim nitayu keganot ale nahar, kahalim nata Adonai karazim ale mayim, yizal mayim midaya v'zaro b'mayim rabim, v'yarom me'agag malko v'tinaseh malchuto. El motzio mimitraim ketoafot re'em lo yochal goyim tzarav va'atzmotehem yigarem v'chitzav yimchatz karash achav ka'ari uchlavi mi yakimenu Mevarchecha Baruch va'orerecha arur.
Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam asher natan lanu Torat emet v'chayei olam nata b'tochenu. Baruch atah Adonai noten haTorah. With the Torah in our midst, and these words of bringing goodness and wholeness to people around us, we think of those who face the future not fully whole, those who are in need of healing of mind, of body, and of spirit. We think of them and whisper their names out loud. We join together in the words of Mishabrach, which can be found on page 253. We turn to page 252 and rise as we lift our Torah high.
Page 256.
We continue with the Aleinu on page 283. You may be seated. We turn to page 291 for our memorial meditation. It is hard to sing of oneness when the world is not complete, when those who once brought wholeness to our life have gone, and not but memory can fill the emptiness their passing leaves behind. But memory can tell us only what we were, in company with those we loved. It cannot help us find what each of us, alone, must now become. Yet no one is really alone. Those who live no more echo still within our thoughts and words, and what they did is part of what we have become. We do best homage to our dead when we live our lives more fully, even in the shadow of our loss. For each of our lives is worth the life of the whole world, and each one is the breath of the ultimate one. In affirming the one, we affirm the worth of each one whose life, now ended, brought us closer to the source of life, in whose unity no one is alone, and every life finds purpose. We turn now to those who have died at this time in years past. As we mark their yard sites, we remember them. Eugene Allen, Edna Barnett, Mary Bell, Julius Bennett, Lolly Black, Jeffrey Boyer, Yetta Goldstein Brown, Huddy Burstein, Kenneth Campbell, Estera Kukier, William Austin Dougherty, Winifred Davis Dougherty, Oscar Ehrenberg, Leonard Fine, Sarah Dorfman Freypart, Meyer Friedman, Mary Deutzer Gates, Isaac Goldstein, Al Gorbett, Morris Greenblum, Milton Halpern, Rochelle Shelley Jackson, Nat Jefferson, Bertha Katz, Elaine Laney Kaufman, Irving Kay, Harry Kovner, Diane Crape, Ruth Krawitz, Joseph S. Letts, Christine Munch, Hans Newman, Jean Neerman, Hortense Ojeda, Lou Peltrowitz, Mildred Pelsman, Sam Penner, Jacob Phillips, Joseph Edwin Power Jr., Bill Price, Robert Raufman, Edward Ricklin, Beverly Singer Rose, Samuel Rosenberg, Marla Rosenman, Harry Edward Rosenstein, J. Lewis Rubin, Sally Schatz, Robert E. Scheel, Aaron Lieb Lewis Schnitzer, Ali Shapiro, Esther Silver, Richard Simon, Hannah Greenblum Singer, Anita Markham Smith, Hector Svederlich, Celeste Barkin Swanson, Harlan Timon, William S. Taubman, Bickford Neil Umphris, and Edward Vishnevetsky. We also think of two who've died this past month, whose families are in a mourning period of Shloshim. We remember Leslie Sarah Kittler and Roberta Bobby Feldstone. We also think of one who's died this past week, whose family is in a mourning period of Shiva. We remember Marjorie Louise Block, sister of Eddie Lee Block and Barbara Block and Alan Drieben, aunt of Lisa Drieben Seckler, Allison Drieben Zeller, Stephanie Lee Block, Paige Drieben Sachs, and Corey Alexis Block, great aunt of 9 great-nephews and 3 great-nieces. To all of these names, we add those which are in our hearts each and every day as we turn to page 294 and rise as a community for Kaddish Yatom. Yitz Gadal v'yitz Kadash Shmei Rabbah, Be'alma divrach Yerutei v'yamlich malchutei, V'chayachon u'b'yom echon v'chayei d'chol Beit Yisrael, V'agala u'izman kariv v'imru, Amen. Yehei Shmei Rabbah mavarach le'olam ulmei almaya, Yitbarach v'yishtabach v'yitpa'ar v'yitromam v'yitnaseh, v'yitadar v'yitaleh v'yitalal shemei d'kudashah b'richu, La'ela min kol berachata v'shirata, Tushbechata v'nechamata, Da'amiran be'alma v'imru, Amen. Yehei shlama rabba min shemaya, V'chaim aleinu v'al kol Yisrael v'imru, Amen. Oseh shalom b'imramav, Hu ya'aseh shalom, aleinu v'al kol Yisrael v'imru, Amen. May the one who creates harmony on high bring peace to those who, and to all Israel, to which we say, Amen. We have our closing song, Esa Einai, on page 339. Shabbat Shalom.
Shabbat.